Okay, and we are live. We are recording. Hello and
Hello.
welcome to what is, I think, episode number 12 of the Toon Room podcast. Today,
Congratulations.
thank you. Our guest is Michael Shawn Lewis. Thank you, Michael, for doing this and for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Um, as you know, we had our little pre-chat before. On this particular podcast, I'm really interested in the people. I'm sure we'll get to the industry inevitably at some point, and we'll talk about what's going on, in the world there, outside the window, and so on. But I'm really fascinated by personal stories and anecdotes, and various interesting tales of I don't know, challenging times or times when people had to pivot or anything like that is really fascinating to me. And what I discover, and I open pretty much every episode with this, what I discover talking to more and more people is that very few actually set out to do specifically this early on. So very few people who are in animation have been in animation for a long time and are very successful and talented and do amazing jobs in different layers of the industry, more creative or on the business side, doesn't matter. But I don't know, 9 out of 10 didn't really set out to be like, "I wanna work in animation, I wanna be an animator, or I wanna be an animation director, or I wanna be an animation producer." And these stories I find are really wonderful and inspiring for everybody, but also specifically for people starting out, I think. I
Yeah.
think I just heard a few weeks ago Stephen Colbert say that his when younger people approach him and ask him about for advice about show business in general, his answer is always that there is a career for them in show business. 100% he can guarantee it, but it's most probably not the career that they have in mind right now.
Hmm.
So if they really, really want to work in show business, they will make it. But they have to be, smart and flexible and tough and be able to pivot and so on. Um, so yeah, so why don't we, go as far back as you're comfortable with, kind of start at the beginning, and tell us a little bit about what you were passionate about as a younger man. What did you want to do with your life?
Hmm.
And how did you sort of get your professional start? I don't know, in general, or maybe a little bit before that, even as a
Just,
as a student, maybe.
yeah, I'll say even further than that, just because it still sort of impacts me now with what I do. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
so I was raised sort of in the middle of the mountains. I was raised on a farm in Tennessee. I was born in LA, in California, but our family moved back to
Mm,
Tennessee, where my dad was from, and I was raised on a farm. I was an only child on a farm, surrounded by lots of animals and lots of wilderness. And everyone thinks, "Oh my gosh, that must have been so great to be a kid on a farm
mm,
so young." And it
yeah.
was. But for those who've been on a working farm, being the only child on a farm is
Yeah. Yeah. If
not
you're the only
not
kid.
necessary.
Yeah.
There's somebody who has to go get the eggs and feed the cows,
Yeah.
and somebody has to do it all.
Yeah.
Well, when you're the only child, that tends to dump on you. But so I spent a lot of time with animals um,
Hmm.
as a kid, of course, friends from school and such. But uh, I had a really sort of fun, Babe esque styled, Charlotte's
Yeah.
Webian sort of
Yeah.
childhood where I spent a lot of time with my animals. And they had a lot of personality, and they could speak to me in their own ways. Of course, I'm not saying that animals speak English, of course not, but they definitely communicate in their own ways, and I just fell in love with that. I fell in love with a way of communicating and getting ideas across, to these animals and having them communicate with me. As odd as that sounds, it felt like storytelling 101 for me. You know,
Mm, hmm.
it felt like the simplest way to listen to a story being told, whether it's my first farm pet was a pig. Her name
Yeah.
was Edna, and she was the smartest thing in the world, but she would tell me when things were going wrong in the farm. Like
Uh,
she would tell me if something was wrong, and I could tell because she would lead me over to where it was. So storytelling, I only say that to roll into storytelling because
yeah,
I think the one thing that we kind of all share in common, at least I hope we all share in common, is the love and the passion for good storytelling, right?
yeah,
At the end of the day, that's kind of what it boils down to is how can we tell a really good story? How can we get a really fun, engaging, or not necessarily fun, but definitely engaging story across? How can we express our emotions? How can we express our thoughts? How can we express our ideologies, our philosophies, our all of these different ways of communicating? How is it that we do that? You know, it goes back to
yeah,
campfires and
yeah.
spears and drawing on cave walls um, and that's always fascinated me. That sort of deeper level of storytelling. How I got there was a bit of a roller coaster. I started off. I started off in before I went to college. I started off doing a lot of theater and music,
Yeah.
and then I decided I wanted to go to university. So I got my bachelor's and my master's in classical music.
Okay.
Um, I originally studied opera, and I also
Oh
studied
wow.
conducting. So I thought I was going to be, this singer, conductor, whatever. And as soon as I graduated college with my master's, I thought, you know what? I love opera. And I want to do that for the rest of my life, right?
What was the epiphany? Why did you change your mind? Why the
I
change of
don't
heart?
know. It just, it didn't. I noticed that in my studies and in my time getting my master's degree, that as much as I loved the art form, it just wasn't
Yeah.
as fulfilling doing it. You know,
Right. Okay.
I got my master's at the New England Conservatory in Boston. Tremendous school, loved it. A rigorous program, and I remember at the end of it thinking, I'm so proud that I got through that, and I did that with the level of success that I did. And all I could think was, well, now what?
Yeah. It's like
So
doing
I
the Navy SEAL training and you're proud of yourself for going through the program, but it doesn't mean that you necessarily want to go fight a war, right?
right, and fortunately or unfortunately, that now what has
Yeah.
been a modus in my life and career all the way across.
Hmm.
So I went into uh, musical theater, decided to do my first audition for that, and my first audition was for Phantom of the Opera, and I wound up getting it, and it took me off from
Yeah,
New
nice.
York to Europe, and I worked in Germany doing Phantom of the Opera there, and other shows over there in Europe for quite a while, all through my 20s. Les Misérables. I had a
Hmm.
really wonderful time, and that was transformative for me because there I got to really hook into a style of storytelling that I connected with, right?
Right.
And then it's all the same producers and the same directors that did it in New York. And one of the music directors said, "Hey, we have an opening coming up on Broadway. Do you want to audition for it for Phantom?" And so I did, and I got it, and I went over and I started working on Broadway, and so that was fun. Did that, got to work with Hal Prince on that, and then I did Woman in White with Trevor Nunn, and just had a really exciting theater time, And I'm getting up there, and I'm doing my bows, and I'm doing my 8 shows a week, and doing the
Hmm.
grind, and about you know 10 years into it, I
Yeah.
start getting that little itch of, okay, now what?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I'll say Broadway in and of itself is a we call it the velvet handcuffs because once you get in, you're like, oh, this is so
Hmm.
wonderful. I'm never going to be
Yeah.
free because it's 8 shows a week, 7 days a week
Yeah.
with only 2 weeks of paid vacation. And after a while, you
Yeah.
start to, it just gets
Hmm.
a little tiring. And I had
Right.
always loved storytelling, right? And at a certain point, I felt like I wasn't telling stories the same way that I really wanted to. And
Yeah.
then I had something weird happen to me. I had facial cancer, and I lost a good chunk of my nose. I had to be awake for part of the surgery
Oh.
because we had to decide how it was a Mohs procedure, but it was a Mohs procedure that was done really, 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 really deep. And I lost a
Mhm.
large chunk of my nose from it. And the doctor, she was wonderful in New York, said, I need you to be awake for the procedure the entire time because at a certain point, once we get far enough, we're going to have to know how we're going to reconstruct. And
Mhm.
so after about 6 hours of being there waiting, as she's cutting on my face and testing and cutting on, anyhow, she puts the mirror in front of my face. So it's time to decide. And she put the mirror in my face, and my entire body just kind of went numb, and I felt like I wasn't in my
Mhm.
body because all I saw was this sort of face where an alien had come down and just taken a chunk out of my face, and
Yeah.
all I could think of in that moment is, what in the hell am I doing with my life? At a certain point, I was chasing my dreams, and then I stopped chasing my dreams, and I started chasing dreams that I thought I should be chasing, you
Right.
know?
Yes. Big
And it wasn't
distinction there.
fulfilling me
Yeah.
anymore. And I realized at that point, I no longer wanted to just be a servant to other people's stories.
Yeah.
At that time, I decided I really wanted to hook back into my own creative voice and hook back into things that were important for me, messages that I felt needed to get out in the world.
Yeah. I can
And so
relate to that.
since then, it's been a big change in my life. That was in my mid 30s. I'm now in my mid 50s, and since then, I have been doing nothing but various forms of story creation and storytelling. It first went into theatrical producing, where my ex-husband and I, very good friends still, produced a show off Broadway, got a Drama Desk nomination for it, and that sort of set the dominoes in motion of
Mhm.
getting everything going. I founded an organization in New York called
Yeah.
the New York Children's Theater Festival. I found that I loved working with and for kids, just loved it.
Mhm.
Very, very
Yeah.
fulfilling for me. For me personally, it's one of the most fulfilling things I've done.
Yeah.
And
And especially
then
it's such a it's a different, like, theater, it's a different medium, right? It's not just you make something and you put it out there and maybe you get some feedback, maybe you don't get some feedback, but you're in there in the room, whether it's rehearsing or watching the shows, it's a different energy,
it's a very different
rather
because
than
it's very spontaneous, right?
yeah,
It's
yes.
extremely spontaneous. You have to get sort of the planning there, and you have to get all of the framework in place, and then you just kind of have to let it go, right?
Mhm.
I find that translates over.
Yeah,
We'll talk about it in a second. I find that translates really well over into what I do in animation too. But so that, like I
yeah.
said, I was doing theater there, and then the Hensons picked up a show, the off-Broadway show that we originally created. The Hensons picked it up to develop it with us to turn it into a TV series.
Hmm,
And we worked on that. That's when I started first working with the Jim Henson Company, that's just been a tremendous relationship. I think the Jim Henson Company has been such a wonderful influence for me personally. Working with that team over there is it's a fun, creative think tank. You know,
yeah.
at the time I was working very closely with Hallie Stanford and with Lisa Henson, and it was just a really very, like I said, very creative, very. They sort of want you to run with your creativity and
Yeah.
and
So
how to.
supportive,
Yeah,
yes?
right.
Is
They're
that the
very
word?
supportive.
Yeah,
Right, it is. It's very supportive. It's very creator driven, which is really wonderful.
yeah. So they
So
let
we wound up selling the show to
they let you cook.
PBS. Yes, that's right. We wound up selling the show to PBS. That was Splash and Bubbles, and we did. I think it was 94 episodes plus a movie on Splash and Bubbles for PBS, and then from there I just started doing a lot more directing as well because I
Mhm.
I love show running and I love writing, and I found also during that time that I really loved directing. I had a real personal passion for directing because it's another way of storytelling, right? You
Of
get your
course, yeah.
hands dirty in a different way. And that just became a personal passion of mine too. On top of the writing and on top of the world building and creating that you do as a creator, show creator, there's the execution of it all through directing was really exciting. And I got to direct with the Hensons on Word Party and Slumberkins, and they let me direct some more on Splash and Bubbles, and it was just really fun. And then I started working with different companies like Nickelodeon on Max in the Midnights that we just did. That was
Mhm.
fun. That was really exciting because that was my first time dealing with Unreal.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Right.
so it's been a fun journey. You know, I go from a very extremely live action world, being theater,
Yes.
translating into animation, and over like a 30-year period. And to me, yes, they are very different tools with which to express your art, with which to express your story, but it's still
Correct.
fundamentally good storytelling. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, it really boils down to finding that true story that you want to tell, finding the heart of what it is, the message that you want to get across, and then plugging that in and letting it find its voice. One of the
Yeah.
most exciting things for me about working in animation that parallels to working in theater is the more collaborative you are, the better your baby is going to
Mhm.
be.
Right. Yes. It's a team sport, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I find, when oftentimes, as a director, when you're trying to, get a note across and you're trying to augment or adjust the beat a little bit. When you say theatrical in my mother tongue, which is Romanian, right? I need this to be a little bit more theatrical. In other words, it needs to have a bit more oomph, a bit more pizzazz, a bit more energy, right? Which doesn't really work the same in English. But as
Mm-mm.
I started doing more and more and more animation, I was like, this needs to be a little bit more theatrical. And
Right.
I realized that in my mind, it is akin to animation, maybe a little bit more than live action, because with live action, you kind of maybe want that wall a little bit more. You want to maybe entertain the illusion a little bit more. You don't want to break the illusion of that world because it's real, right? It's a reflection of our physical reality. Whereas
Yeah.
in animation, it's so much easier to perceive it as a stage, right? Where maybe there's a little bit less of that barrier, or a little bit less of that fear that if I poke into it, or if I'm a little bit too self-referential or irreverent, it's gonna ruin the illusion somehow or
Right.
break it. So
Right.
in my mind, very early on, I made that connection, that energetic connection, if nothing else, between live theater and animation. Haven't done also a little bit of theater when I was younger as well, and been on stage. That was my subconscious automatic shorthand. Whenever there was a
hmm
beat we were struggling with in animation, it's like, we need to make this a bit more theatrical. so,
It's
so
it's funny
in
because you
my
think
mind, there's
about
a
it.
strong connection there.
Yeah, you're right. There is, and if you think about it, there's like I'm drawn to. I was drawn to opera for a reason. You know, in the very
Mm,
beginning when I was younger, and that's because there was a certain theatricality about it that required you to use multiple different aspects of storytelling to come together to tell a story. You know, you have music with you have
yeah,
theater, you have
yeah.
singing, you have costumes, you have sets, you
Costumes, the sets,
have
yeah.
all of it. So many layers that go into it. And then when you go into musical theater, same thing. So many layers and so much. And then when you go into animation, there are so many layers. So
Mhm.
there are so many creative inputs that are crucial to your show finding the legs that you dream it could have. And in the best situation, it has better legs than you ever thought it could. That's the best
Yeah.
situation, right? Then there are, of course, other
Yeah.
situations where you're like, okay, well, we'll keep working on that one.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But ideally, like you said, you wanna be in that space where it feels like it finds a life of its own, right? And it blossoms, and you kind of go, aha, there it is, and then you
Right.
just sort of nurture it, and then you're the caretaker.
Yeah. My son is 5, turned 6 this year, and
Hmm.
you sort of walk into parenting having this preconceived notion of, okay, I'm going to do this, and this is going to help this, and I'm going to
Yeah,
steer this
yeah. When
way and
I
do this.
when I have a child, yeah, 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 yeah.
And then all of a sudden
Yes.
you see this being in front of you that, yes, you helped create, but at the same time has its own voice that needs to be heard, that has its own
Yeah.
true self-defined, or hopefully self-defined, voice. And if you try to speak for it, all you do is get in the way.
Oh, for sure.
So
Yes.
so you have to be
Yeah.
responsible. But my husband's a psychologist. He said one of the best things about parenting to learn is that you have to be not responsible always for a child, but responsible to a child. Yes, you have to be
Mm,
responsible for your child, of course, right? But if you're
yeah.
constantly only being responsible for everything your child does, you don't empower your child, right? So it's also
Hmm.
about being responsible to your child, which translates to your show, to your IP. You have to be responsible
Yeah.
to what it is that you're creating so that
Yeah.
it can indeed find its own voice, so that it has its own heartbeat, and that it finds its own unique twist.
Yeah. 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 I mean, amen. What can I say? Yes, for sure.
Right.
And I think in the modern world, we were just sort of talking with Fraser. Hi, Fraser. Thank you for joining us.
Hi
A little
guys,
bit
greetings
Hi,
from
Fraser.
Guadalajara. Very nice to meet you, Michael.
Nice to meet you too, Fraser.
a little bit earlier about just the sheer volume of things that are being made in the world in general, content, you name it, whatever it is, movies, live act, it doesn't matter, everything. Just such a oversaturate animation, oversaturation of everything, and kind of we're talking like these sort of conveyor belt productions and things like that,
Hmm.
and especially in a corporate environment, which I can speak to a little bit. I guess it's part and parcel of that environment where that bit of it sort of gets lost, which fine. Yeah, that's the type of product that you engage with. That's the thing you're selling. That's the thing you need to protect. I understand. But in terms of committing the sin of ridding the world of somebody's original voice, that's environment is not really that conducive to that. And in other words, if you are thinking about them or approaching projects like we were just talking about, which is the correct way of thinking of it, about it, then you stand a chance of creating something different, something original, something that you know is a thing in and of itself, and can kind of stand on its own 2 feet. And even if it's something that is it's one season or whatever, a few episodes or 2 seasons, and it's not 10, that doesn't diminish from the value of that project by any means. And I keep coming back to this Neil Gaiman answer in an interview. So uh, uh, it's not a quote per se, but in an interview, somebody was asking, like, if I want to write a book or create my own graphic novel, it's so hard and it's so oversaturated, and competition is so tough. Would you encourage us to do this? And he said something, paraphrasing obviously, but he said something to the effect of, like, yes, there will be a million others doing exactly what you're doing, but none of
Hmm.
them will be you.
Yeah.
So even if you're writing the seemingly the same story, we're talking about the same topic. yours is going to be yours, and somebody else is going to be somebody else's. And it's those things that you were mentioning earlier in terms of, being a director, like, oh my God, this is exciting. Like I'm building I'm shaping. Oh, right. And you get that little fizz inside, and that's the manifestation of who you are, right? So, um, yeah, I like that, and I think there's there's a lot of value that's being kind of a little bit dismissed, maybe nowadays, in terms of kind of these sort of smaller, original, personal stories.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm curious, Michael, about you were saying about the work that you've done with the Henson Company.
Yeah.
One of the things that in recent years I thought was really interesting and admirable, building on what they did originally with Sesame Street, was
Mm-hmm.
the puppet work they've been doing with refugee communities. That
Mm.
they, as a team, engage with contemporary real world issues that are impacting children. And I think that I would be really interested to hear your own take on where that balance is between um, people who are in the industry who are keen to get their new original personal voice across, and what the eternally relevant and important things are about story in its most ancient forms that we constantly need to revise and remind ourselves of in relation to what is actually happening outside the window as opposed to what is happening on one screen after another, because
Yeah.
I've always felt that that was one of the things that the Henson Company had as puppeteers, was the ability to engage in real time in a theatrical present
Mm-hmm.
sense with an audience, which we are kind of robbed of in animation in a way. But what are your own thoughts about um, the importance of story as as one of the things that keeps a society healthy? I always think of the artistic community as being like kind of the immune system for a society. Like you begin to know when things are wrong because it surfaces in stand-up comedy, it surfaces in editorial cartoons, it surfaces, but it also has to surface, like Ted Hughes writing his stories for his kids after the death of their mother, that stories
Mm-hmm.
exist for a reason rather
Mm-hmm.
than just to gratify the ego of the person writing them, if that makes sense. And I've always felt that that was Henson's, almost their business model, was finding the things that are eternally important for a universal audience, particularly for children.
I think, Jim had a really wonderful quote. I don't know if I can do it justice, but it was something to the effect of him wanting to create shows for kids, with kids, showing that no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, we're having one human experience together. And sometimes me sharing my own human experience can help somebody who's processing something in their own human experience. Equally, there's a tremendous amount that I can learn from watching somebody else's human experience.
Yep.
Not pretending to emulate it, not pretending to mimic it or try to reproduce it in my own way, although that can be okay, but truly listening to it and trying to find what the message is that it's trying to express to me. It's trying to express for
An
itself.
empathetic engagement.
Yeah, yes, that's right. And I think that there is, I wish I had as much faith and trust in entertainment to say that we are an immune system. I think that we are a little bit perhaps more of a circulatory system that can equally distribute carcinogenic crap just as quickly as we can,
Amen.
save the day.
Yeah.
Amen.
I think that we see a lot of that right now in the world. We've seen it for tales as old as time. I mean,
Yeah, it's been
propaganda
around
takes
always, right?
Absolutely. It's just how it recycles in our generation, how it rears its ugly little head, and what the answer is to it, and what the healing is that comes after that. I lived in Germany for 10 years, and I lived in Germany in the 90s. And we all know the history that Germany went through in the 20th century. But I don't think a lot of people understand, unless you've lived there, that there was a healing that had to happen in that country
Hmm.
in order for it to be the powerhouse and the wonderful country that it is now. It had to go through a certain healing. And that was done through, of course, education, but that education took forms of also entertainment. It took shape of comedy. It took the shape of storytelling. It took the shape, you think of Brüder Grimm, all the Grimm's fairy tale, the Grimm's, they have a
Hmm.
rich history of storytelling. It's how they adapt their stories now to tell them in the way that they want to be stepping forward. So media definitely had a massive impact in that. And I don't mean media
It's
just
interesting you should mention
television.
it. I taught for 5 years on and off at the Fachhochschule in Salzburg, and
Das kann
Salzburg
sein.
makes a very high percentage of its tourist money from The Sound of Music.
Right, of course.
And nobody in Salzburg has seen The Sound of Music when I was teaching there.
Of course.
And they actually hired a copy of it to run at the local art house cinema, and it caused a real controversy.
I bet.
Because a lot of people, literally, my students were like, "What is it? What is this obsession with this movie? Why does everybody come here?" And I was like, "Well, you must have seen the movie." And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, well, you might want to, because." And our campus was 3 stops away from Berchtesgaden, so that whole thing of as Brian McDonald shares with you, that notion of what we share stories because it's survival information. It's part of the healing process. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think it's crucial, and I think it's crucial for us to be cautious also how we do it. I know there's a lot, and I'm very, very supportive of artists who have a passionate voice and want to express that passionate voice. They have a message to tell, and I'm a firm believer in free speech and the freedom of expression. As an observer, though, I just noticed there's such a massive amount right now in this moment of chaotic messaging that's happening, be it in children's entertainment, be it in the news, the way it's being broadcast, be it even in theater. There are all sorts of contradicting messages, and of course it's crucial because it creates the discussion that's necessary, right? But my fear is that now there is so much mass content being created, and we don't have ways as much, except through co-viewing as parents, to monitor what stuff is being fed to our kids when they sit.
Well, it's also not being edited or curated, because the
Correct.
new culture online is that you don't have to be. It was the Umberto Eco warning about giving access to people who will immediately sound like experts because of the platform that they have, but the platform is uncurated and unedited.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's that thing of obviously you have to take responsibility for what you make, right? So there needs to be something behind it other than, oh, this will monetize, right?
So
Ideally.
difficult to decide who decides that, though, right?
Yes.
That's who decides that.
And it's really hard in a layered industry. I don't know how things will change as we move along, but
that being said, the fact that we have platforms like YouTube out there where or Roblox, where you can go out and create and experiment and try out new things and do new things and do it on a shoestring budget, is going to ultimately stretch our creative brains. It's going to force us to do a little bit more yes and not just either or. You know, it doesn't
Yes.
have to always be
Yeah.
either multi-million-dollar budget this or shoestring budget that. We have the range now to try out all sorts of different things and which works best for which story. Because
Sure.
we've seen it, you've seen it, I'm sure, I've seen it, where there was a really simple story that was way overproduced. There was a really simple message that had just too much money poured into it.
Yeah.
And then it got fat and it lost its heart. And you're like, oh, well, that was good, but they could have. And the other way around, there are also attempts to do things that should be multi-million-dollar budgets, and
It should have a little bit more
they
scale,
should have
but
right.
cannot afford to. Yes.
But how wonderful it is that we have a place to try it out.
Yeah. Yes. It's definitely great, and obviously it's platforms like YouTube and YouTube. I mean, YouTube is king, obviously now, but there's other avenues to post your content, and it's definitely democratized things. But also, like we were just saying, there is also a lot of noise. So you have the opportunity to do it, and I think now what the barrier of entry is the volume. So you can create something and test it out on YouTube, but if you want to grow it organically, you have to keep feeding it. You have to keep creating, and because that's how the algorithm is built. So if, let's say, you are an independent creator, right? And you guys know this, maybe for the people who will be listening to this later, but a little bit of YouTube 101. But if you're an independent creator and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to create something and put it up on YouTube, you have to keep creating. You can't just make an episode of whatever it is or X
One
amount of
off. Yep.
seconds or minutes and go I don't know, do your manifestation meditation, hope that it will go viral. That's just not going to happen. So it's not, there is no barrier of entry in terms of maybe even the cost of production. Let's say if you're an animator and you know how to do your thing, and as opposed to, I don't know, maybe a writer who needs a director or an animator or a team or somebody to realize this. But you can get things made and you can publish them, but to make them successful, or at least to have a decent amount of eyeballs to get feedback, at least if that is the goal. Maybe not, okay, we're not going to monetize this or make a lot of money, but we want to see what the audience thinks so we can keep kind of fiddling under the hood, right? You have to keep to get the eyeballs. You have to keep creating. You have to, and then the
So
algorithms go, oh, okay, this,
it kind of takes me back to an old conversation that I have still whenever I talk at universities with theater kids. There's art, and then there's show business.
yeah, yeah.
And you can be a tremendous artist and not know how to navigate show business.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Or you can be a very savvy showman who doesn't necessarily have the strongest message to say. We've seen that too,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
In this business, there's a place for all of that. However, in the
Mhm.
business side of it, there's not. In the commercial side
Right.
of it, yes, it's wonderful that we're getting out there with our independently created content and we're moving it. But again, just like production process for animation, it's kind of production process for the commercial aspect of it as well. You have to have great collaborators. You can't do
Right.
everything by yourself. I take that back. There are some people who can. I'm not one of them. Right?
Mhm. Yeah.
For me, I need to know what my strengths are, and then
Mhm.
I need to know what they're not so that I can surround myself with those that are. that also share a
Yes.
similar vision and passion and creative end goal and perhaps financial commercial end goal, and then
Hmm.
we find the ways to get it where it is that we want to take it to. Horrible
Yeah.
English. So take it.
I think it's always good to have people who are better at certain things than you are. And
Hmm.
also, I think it's good to have people like specialized in certain things. With all this talk of new tech and so on, and although you can, let's say, not in the turmoil of the current discussions, but 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, I don't care, way down the line, you could theoretically be a one-man creator, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And make the whole thing from scratch and so on, but you only have the one brain. And although there's a lot of people who are multi-talented, but you're going to be the best at one or two things. And then
Hmm.
the other things you'll have to compensate with certain tools, and even that is not going to get you to the level of proficiency if you're just thinking about, let's say, directing all day, and somebody else is just thinking about distribution all day. Doesn't
Right.
matter how strong your AI agent is, who's doing, or which is doing the distribution for you. That guy is thinking distribution 24/7, and
Right.
maybe he's using his AI agents that are set up or way more proficient. So just, find a guy
Yeah.
like that, be friends, get on the same wavelength, find a way to collaborate.
Yeah.
So I think at any rate, the team sport aspect of it is going to be valuable. Maybe the teams can get smaller, more nimble, more flexible. We'll see. And it's also more fun. I mean, for certain things, it's nice if it's very intimate and you're creating something, like akin to writing a piece of text, a poem, or a book or something. It's very intimate. It's yours, or making a painting a painting. I get that. But for other creative processes, it's so much more fun when you do it with other people. Wouldn't you agree?
I think for me personally, that's crucial. So
Yeah.
I consider myself a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, Renaissance man who
Yeah.
loves. I'm curious about just about anything that draws my curiosity. It's a little ADD, right? Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. What is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I can
So
relate to that. Yes.
I have the things that I'm passionate about. I take very seriously, and I really dive into deeply.
Hmm.
But also at the same time, I like. It goes back to that same thing that I said before. Okay, what's next? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
what's next?
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand that. What's next?
Yes.
Doesn't mean I'm the master of it, mm-mm. But it does mean that I am curious about maybe another way of doing it, or another way of thinking about it, another way of expressing it, or
Yes.
another aspect of that pipeline, right? So for
Hmm.
me as a showrunner, that particular trait is invaluable. That particular trait is probably that ADD part of my brain,
Hmm.
right? That can hyper focus on one thing and sort of with others, but then switch on a dime to something else to hyper focus on.
Yes.
That part of my brain serves me well when I'm show running. Because
Absolutely. Yeah.
when I have a show in production, I have my team that I trust. I could close my eyes and the car could drive itself.
Hmm.
But it allows me in that moment to not watch the director, to look over at the audio and what's happening with the sound right now, or to work with a composer specifically on a musical beat that has to happen to support what's happening
Hmm.
with the
Hmm.
direction, or to work in color to make sure that the color fits the mood that we're going for right now with this. And
Yeah.
it all of a sudden that ability to hyper focus on one thing helps me tie the whole picture together. So it's a blessing and a curse to say, I have this thing that makes me curious about a lot of different things, because I find that I never truly master one thing perfectly. And as soon as I
Yeah.
do, I'll turn around and do something else, and I go back, and a month later there are already 7 new ways of doing it that have come out. You're like, oh shit, now you know
Yeah. Yeah.
catch up on that, dang it. But
Yeah.
It's challenging and it's exciting, you know, but definitely having the ability to switch your focus on different things.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean everyone thinks that means multitasking, and multitasking is for me personally, multitasking just makes my brain go, ah!
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally, for me, it has to be more
It's
like a
painful. It's
jukebox.
physically painful.
Yeah. You do it. You have to do it. You can't not do it.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy it when I do enjoy it when I'm not a jukebox and I don't have to take one record out at a time filled full of 100. And I do enjoy not having to uh, play all records at the same time. I enjoy being able to take one record out of my track and play it, right? And then put it back in, knowing that I have a full catalog in here somewhere. And if I have to,
Yeah.
I can focus on that other song. But
Mhm.
if I let go to the cacophony of all the different songs that are playing or that are stored simultaneously in my little jukebox of a show brain, it would just be cacophony. It would just be chaos.
Yes. Nice.
So
Yeah.
it's better that I hyper focus on one thing and trust my team or trust my
Mhm.
collaborators, trust my co-writers, trust my directing team, trust my composition team, trust my producers, trust so that they can run and I can
Yeah.
focus in on the things that I feel need a little extra focus.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. So we digressed a little bit, which is a wonderful
Sorry.
conversation. I'm having a blast. No, not but not by any fault of your own. So Jim Henson Company.
Yeah.
You were telling us a little bit of about that and how wonderful that collaboration was and how supportive they were and they kind of let you do your
Hmm.
thing. And this was, correct me if I'm wrong, relatively early in this pivot of yours
Hmm.
in
Oh yeah,
going
it
like
was the
full
first
on
company that I worked with.
into
It was the
animation,
first
right?
company that I worked with in the pivot in
So
animation.
so I would go out on a limb here and take a wild guess that being lucky enough to work in that sort of an environment where they let you do that, where they, like we said earlier, like they let you cook and they support you and probably, this needs to be part of the process, but they let you make your own mistakes and um, go through your own process. I would guess that that was very empowering and a good environment to kind of find your own way of doing things, your own voice, your own rhythms. Um, so if you could
Yeah.
speak maybe a little bit to that, like early on, because it can be daunting. You're tackling a whole new medium, right? A lot of the things that you've done and you've learned and other parts of your career obviously are applicable, but there's all these new things now, right? That you have to kind of get through your head and absorb.
So I think that yes, and
Okay.
so for me, my own personality, my own life, my own history, I've lived and worked in 4 or 5 different countries.
Hmm.
I speak 5 different languages. I have a natural ability to adapt and learn what's around me.
Yeah.
Um, it interests me. It
Hmm.
genuinely interests me. Like when I lived in Germany, it genuinely interests me why they say things the way they do. Why in German grammar do you put this word here?
Yeah.
Because language is
Yeah.
always an expression of thought, right? Language is
Hmm.
always a tool of expression. And so why is it so complicated for like an English speaker for me? Why, or for
Yeah.
many of the Latin language speakers, why is German so complicated? But
Hmm.
then when you get into it and you understand the framework and the form, you understand that there's certain freedom in there for expression that we actually don't have in a place that is maybe less framed linguistically. That translates over into switching mediums sometimes.
Hmm.
You know, I learn about the way certain artists express themselves. It helps me understand what it is, the message that I'm trying to express. And maybe it inspires me to learn a new way of expressing it, to maybe
Mm.
even understand my own message a little better before I try to
Yeah.
imprint it on anyone or anything else.
Yeah.
So, I have worked in the about 20, almost 20 years now that I've been working in the world of TV. I have worked with people who have gone into this industry at age 17 as their sole and only passion, and who have
Mm-hmm.
made animation their absolute forward modus, right? It's been
Yes.
their vehicle of choice their entire lives. And let me
Yeah.
tell you what, when they sit and they do it, it is jaw-droppingly inspiring. I mean, I had the privilege of working with a director by the name of John Stevenson from in when I was doing Max in the Midnights, and he, as a director, like, he has been in animation, doing animation for so long. And I was relatively so green, I would just sit and watch him work with my jaw dropped. That's so amazing. And I would think, oh, that's so spontaneous. And for him, it wasn't spontaneous. For him, it was something
Yeah.
that he had used before, thought before it was a great tool. And it's just that his tool
Muscle
chest was
memory, in a
so
sense. Yes.
rich,
Yeah.
right? His tool chest was so rich. And for someone whose tool chest wasn't as rich, it was just wildly impressive and exciting, right? I felt like,
Yeah.
I just need to watch you. Shut up and watch you, because I'm just going to learn just by watching you.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
it's the same way when I would sit and watch certain directors stand up on the Henson lot and direct, or
Mm-hmm.
writers, when I would get into a writer's room and I would hear certain creators start their process of spitballing ideas, and it's just really exciting. So
Yeah.
for me, switching mediums wasn't as intimidating as it would be for someone who
Right.
perhaps had been doing solely and only one thing their entire life and had been thrust into a new career. Because I wasn't thrust into a new career. For
Yeah.
me, it was a new way of storytelling. And I spent my entire life doing nothing but telling stories. So I got to
Mm-hmm.
learn. It's like my kid, my son. When we have art time or creative time, yes, there's certain things, certain tools that he loves to use over and over again. But at the same time, when all of a sudden we break out something new like clay, like, you
Mm-hmm.
can just see his brain start to go, ooh, and then I can do this and this and this and this and this and this. Right? And then the next time he goes back to use his water paints, maybe it impacts the way he looks at how a picture can be
Yeah. Or
executed.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That translates, because I still produce theater. I still create theater for
Mm.
kids. I've got a show right now
Nice.
playing at SeaWorld. I've got that I produced. I create for cruise ship companies as well. I've got shows on Royal Caribbean, on
Mm-hmm.
Carnival. Tremendous companies to work with for kids programming and content. And everything informs each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's to me, it's storytelling.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So after the Jim Henson Company,
Yeah.
let's take it from there. What
Well,
followed?
there's been a lot of back and forth with Jim Henson Company. Do this for a while, jump to another show, jump on another project, come back and
Mm-hmm.
do another show with Jim Henson Company. So I did. I worked on a YouTube series, with Nico Animation out of LA, called Toonies. That was really interesting. It was a whole musical series that happened, music videos that were produced.
Mm.
And that was interesting because of the medium. It was animation. It was 3D animation, but it was only using songs to tell stories, and it was
Nice.
just music videos. So it was basically just a music video crash course of how to create music videos, and
Yeah.
that was fascinating for me. And of course, coming from a musical background, that was interesting for me too. At the same time,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So that was exciting. And then, while I'm doing all of this other work, of course, the one thing I'm always doing in the background, did it, 10 minutes before I logged in to do the talk with you, is I'm always creating. I'm always creating new show ideas. I'm out peddling my goods. I'm out selling new ideas. I have a show in development right now that's about to be announced by the network, by the broadcaster, this week, or imminently is what they said. So we should be going into production on that this spring and summer. So very
Nice,
exciting.
congrats.
Thanks.
So it's a show you were working on with one of your co-writers named
Dina Diamond. Dina Diamond
Okay.
she's brilliant. So she's a comedian extraordinaire. And she and I have a blast creating together. But it's a show that we've been working on now for the last, I'm going to say, 5 years, 6
Oh
years.
wow.
And that's how
Yeah.
selling to these larger networks and broadcasters, it tends to be, shows that you've been cooking in your brain for a while, because when you get up to sell it and it finally gets purchased, it's got to be really well thought through and fleshed out. At least if
Yeah.
you're a no-name,
Yeah.
right? If I come in, having a bunch of movies behind my back and under my belt, then that's different, But for me, who would transition from one thing to the next one, and they're like, "Well, who are you, and what are you doing in this, and what do you have to offer?"
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
then that's when your IP has to have its own voice. That's as strong, if not stronger, than yours. Which kind of is it is your voice. Let's be honest, it is your voice. It's just that it's the IP.
Yes. Which is a good way to think about it, right? I mean, it's everything you do, you populate with different versions of yourself or aspects of
Right.
yourself,
Right.
inevitably. But kind of thinking about it as its own entity, I think it's
Yeah.
a healthy thing.
So after that, like, I've been working with Nickelodeon for a while now, the last few years, on different projects, and at the same time, I'm working with Dr. Seuss Enterprises right now. We have 2 shows that we are working on and creating and loving and developing, one of which is in association with the Jim Henson Company. That's already been announced, that we're out selling, which is fun. So I got to put the Seuss and Henson had worked together a long time ago when Jim was alive, and they did the Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss. And then after Jim and Ted Theodore Geisel left us, that relationship just sort of went away, fizzled away. And this is that we're working on a show right now. This is the first time it's a new collaboration again between the two companies. Yeah.
Wow, milestone.
Because I've been working with Dr. Seuss for a while on other projects, and of course I've been working with Henson now for a long time on other projects. So I kind of brought them two together on this one show, and we've had a blast developing it.
Oh wow, nice. So would you take credit for this? Is this your merit of bringing these two partners back together after a long time?
I literally said, "Hey, I have an idea. What if we do a show with thus and such?" And then I went over to the other and said, "What if we do this?" And this was at Kid Screen, and they were like, "Great!" And then 5 minutes later, the 3 of us were sitting in a room together.
Oh, nice. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah, that was
for you.
that was luck synergy. That was just because I had one of my favorite people in the world, Susan Brandt, who's the president of Dr. Seuss Enterprises, and one of my other favorite people in the world, Hallie Stanford from the Jim Henson Company. They were both there in the same convention center, and I thought, they've got to meet. We've got to find something to get together. This would be too fun, right?
Yeah. That's wonderful. When you feel like that, because I think a lot of times in this industry and in any other industry, you get caught up with, I don't know, climbing the ladder, running a business, whatever it is, and you forget the value of having fun. You forget the value of enjoying and loving the people you're working with, and how much that feeds you and informs the process, and how energizing it is, even if it's tiring, and if you work long hours, but if you do it with people you love and you have fun with them, it's a
Amen.
completely different thing, right?
I'll say, let me just say this one thing. So I come like you know now. I come originally like quasi from the world of theater, right?
Hmm.
Um, where working together hand in hand every step of the way, every moment those lights are on, at rehearsals, creating all of
Yeah,
it together. You are working hand in hand with everyone around you, with
yeah,
costume designers, with directors, with your fellow actors, with the composer if you're lucky enough to have them there working with you. Um, and there is this like team energy.
yeah.
And the shows that I've had the most fun on, and the shows that have been the most rewarding for me personally in the world of animation, have been shows that have been able to breathe a little bit of that energy into them too. Because
Right.
one of the dangers that we have in the world of animation is I sit in my little cubicle, or I sit at
Yep.
my computer, I sit at my little tablet, and I do my thing. And then I turn it in and
Yes.
it gets judged, observed, noted, whatever, and tossed back to me.
Hmm.
Or gets passed
Hmm.
on to another person for cleanup. And the concept, the feel of team mm,
Yeah.
isn't always there the same. So when you breathe into those shows that do have that energy, it's pretty magical.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why this community exists. Um, is that it's because, like what you just said, like people, it can be a lonely gig. This, you work, you do a little part, you send it off, especially if you're working remotely. So one of the reasons why this community exists, and I decided to start kind of building it and bring people together, is precisely that. I feel it's a very layered industry, and also
Mhm.
kind of segregated in a sense. Um, and there is that it's just not always you can have that feeling of having an awesome team around you, or just networking and socializing and just meeting new people. But also there's a certain knowledge gap that you keep kind of stumbling into.
Mhm.
It's like we were talking about earlier. It's like somebody is a brilliant artist, but they don't understand how show business works. So it's similar here, and they don't need to be or or want to become a brilliant producer or an efficient producer, but just having an understanding of how that part of it, once it's out of my hands, what happens afterwards, right? And but on a human level, it's just hanging out with cool people, and maybe you make friends, and maybe then you work with people that you truly love and you enjoy spending time with. That is so valuable, especially in the gig economy, when you take what you can get, right? And you're happy to have the gig. And for
Yeah.
many people who are artists or technical, illustrators, animators, this is composers. This is so often the case. They rarely work for a salary. Um, so I think that's truly, truly valuable, and I think one is very lucky when they can create that environment for themselves, and work with the people that they enjoy spending time with, and enjoy making things together.
Great.
So that's awesome. That's great. Do you think one other thing you said earlier, that maybe I probably know what your answer is going to be, but I want you to say it because I think it could be potentially quite inspiring for many people. Um, you were saying earlier that, unless you're like a big name hotshot person, it's very easy to get things off the ground and so on, and these are exceptions. But do you think that it's still possible for somebody who isn't a hotshot, or somebody who, you know, does a little bit of this there, a little bit of that there, and is a polymath, by their own admission, and works with a company there and a company there, and is kind of nurturing these long-term relationships. Um, but maybe then pitches to people they haven't worked with, or need to, I don't know, expand their network, or go in with a cold pitch somewhere. Um, do you think that is worth pursuing? Do you think that there's opportunity? Do you think it's still possible to make it, for people who are kind of just working, doing the work, just doing the work, doing the gigs, and maybe they get a little bit discouraged, if they're pitching a show, or they're fighting for a certain job.
Yes, and
Okay.
here's the caveat. Here's the and. One of the reasons that I still survive in this industry
Mm-hmm.
is because I believe in what I'm doing.
Right.
And I believe in my ability to do what it is that I love to do. And this industry is, as we see right now, more than ever changing.
Mm-hmm.
Just as much room as there may be for a new type of business model, a new type of creative expression in animation on the screen, no matter how tiny or large it may be. Just as much room is being made for the new, there's still room, and a wonderful amount of room, for new ideas and new thoughts that come from more experienced players. So yes, there's room for new ideas coming from new players, but there's still a tremendous amount of room for new ideas coming from experienced players. And in some ways, there is a little bit more, not a whole lot, but maybe a little bit more trust put into the experience
Mm-hmm.
just because it's survived. Now,
Right.
because things are changing so fast, if all of us in our experience don't keep our fingers on the pulse, if we are not actively a part of the change that is happening, then there may not be room for us, because
Mm.
we are not evolving as we should be. Because we, as business people, are forced to constantly evolve. We, as creators and artists, stop serving ourselves and our own creativity when we stop evolving. So yes, you may
Right.
have a
Yeah.
tremendous thing that you know is your own way of expressing something, but you show that to me 10 times and I'm going to be limp-faced, no matter how exciting it is. It's going to have to evolve and change. Otherwise, it becomes stagnant and stale. So yes, there is a place for someone who is working in multiple out of multiple relationships, juggling multiple duties with different, perhaps, service entities or production companies or independently. There is a place for that, absolutely. But you have to keep your finger on the pulse. You have to keep your finger actively involved in the evolution that we are all experiencing.
Right. Nice.
Even if you
Thank you
fail.
for that. Of
Even
course.
if you fail.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
It can be scary.
Hmm.
It's really
And
good
I
though.
think, yeah, I think it is. Right now, I think there's a lot of people in that place where it is scary, and maybe they have to make some choices or make some decisions, or take some steps that maybe they're not too convinced about or scared, or
Right.
Um, so listen, we end these things with the same question always. So the community is called the Toon Room. It can be related to what we were just talking about just now, but if I ask you to pin a note to the door to the tin room, which we can think about as metaphor for the industry. You can think about it in which way, however way you want. But if you had to pin a note to the room, welcoming people into this community, what would it say?
Welcoming someone into the community.
Sure, yeah, into the community, into the business of animation, into the world of animation,
My own welcome note would be something a little bit more to the tune of
or a piece of advice, maybe.
piece of advice would probably be easier.
Yeah. So
The
what would you tell yourself when you were kind of moving away from theater, starting in animation? Maybe that's we can be a bit more practical and specific there.
Pay attention to everything that is happening around you.
Okay.
Let it influence, let it influence your tool chest. Let it influence your set of tools with which you create your art, and then influence it with your art.
Hmm.
So let it influence you as you influence it. In animation right now, we
Okay.
have so many new tools coming in, right?
Yeah.
You gotta let them. They've got to be able to influence you, and you have to be able to
Right.
use them to influence. So influence. It would be a give and take of influence.
I like that. Thank you. Nice. Is there anything else you'd like to add
No,
that
I
maybe
love
we've
this.
skipped over?
No, the only thing I can say is that I've appreciated is uh, one one quick side conversation about the idea of collaboration here in Europe versus the concept of collaboration in the States or in North
Hmm.
America. You know,
Yeah.
I came from the U.S. fully confident that I understood what it took collaboratively to create. And when I
Right.
came here to the European Union, I've been living here now for almost 5 years. I have my own company here now. Um, I learned a brand new way of of accessing collaboration. You
So
know,
how would you say it's different?
in the States, you sell your goods very often to someone.
Yeah.
Then they either work with you in the process of getting it sold to a network or a platform, or it's the network and platform directly, and you work with them to develop what it is they need,
Yeah.
right? How you can evolve your art to fit the hole that's in their programming, right?
Yeah.
And here in Europe, there is already such a collaborative energy of, okay, in order to make this happen, your company and my company need to come together to do this, and you need to bring this
Yeah.
to the table, and then I can bring that together. And what can you bring? Oh, you can
Yeah.
bring that. Okay, great, let's try that. There is all of a sudden this wide open conversation about how can we get this done? How
Hmm.
can we do this? God, that's exciting for me. Intimidating,
Right. Yes.
intimidating, because it's not the same business model that I'm used to, but boy, is it
Hmm.
exciting and creative and collaborative. So that's that's just a quick side conversation saying that it's very interesting and fascinating to me to watch and to be a part of.
Yeah, 'cause it is a different system, right, of doing things and of putting projects together and producing,
Mm. Yep.
fundamentally, right? Because Europe really runs on co-productions,
Survives.
and it
Survives on
survives,
co-production.
yes. Yeah, yeah. In animation piece of shit, but in film as well. Um, so I call it lovingly, but jokingly, every time you watch a European production, it's a brotherly grave of logos in the beginning.
That's right.
Um, it's always, X amount of countries of film funds have participated from X amount of countries, 3, 4 production studios working together on it, and so on. It's just, yeah, it's just a different way of doing things, I suppose.
I do wish
Um,
that we here in Europe we could maybe adapt the pageantry of that to perhaps after the art has been presented. But we tend
yes,
to do it
maybe.
up front, and we get to see the
Yes,
pageantry before the show.
yes. I
It's
think
like
maybe
it's
that's,
like taking your curtain call bow in theater before the show has started.
yeah,
You know?
it is a little bit like that, isn't it? I think it's maybe
Uh-huh.
just to appease the funds so that next
It
year
is.
or in 2 years when you
Right.
come back with a new project, then you ask for more money for a new project. They go, "Oh yeah, they mentioned us in the first 5
Right.
minutes
That's right.
of the film." So, yeah. Michael, thank you so very much for your
This
time.
has been a lot of fun. Thanks,
Uh,
Alice.
for your stories, for your human insights. That's what this is about. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope I'll see you. I'll see you in person soon. Annecy, maybe this year or coming
Uh,
by.
if not, if not in Annecy, then maybe later in France for Cartoon Forum. I'm not sure.
Curtain
I,
Forum
I have a
September,
show
right?
that I have a live show that I'm producing and directing that's going to be happening in June, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do both at the same time. But
Right, right, right. Well, in any case, thank you so very much for doing this.
definitely,
Best of luck with the new show
thank you.
and everything and everything your everything else you're juggling.
Right,
Good luck and have a wonderful evening, and I'll speak to you soon.
thank you. You too. Thanks. Take care,
Okay.
Fraser. It was
Okay.
great to
Ciao.
meet you.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Fraser.